You're listening to Static Whisper Stories. Tonight, a building sent its residents a very polite notice, and the people who followed the instructions were the only ones who never found out what was actually happening. There is a printed notice still pinned to the bulletin, board in the lobby of Caldwell Terrace Apartments in Columbus, Ohio. Most of the other notices have been replaced. The ones about parking violations, pest control, utility maintenance. Normal building life. Normal building noise. But this one stayed. Management never took it down. Maybe because removing it would mean admitting it was real in the first place. Pause. The notice reads, and I want you to listen carefully to every word. Dear residents, as part of ongoing building maintenance and security protocols, we kindly ask that all residents refrain from looking out any window facing the interior courtyard between the hours of 2:13 a.m. and 2:17 a.m. until further notice. This applies to all floors. We appreciate your cooperation and understanding. No signature. No department name. No phone number to call with questions. Just a request. Polite. Formal. Completely unexplained. Long pause. My name is Marcus Webb. I moved into Unit 4C at Caldwell Terrace on a Tuesday in late September. And I want to tell you exactly what happened over the next 11 days. Because I think most people still don't understand what that notice actually was. It was not a warning. It was a test. Caldwell Terrace is the kind of apartment building that looks modern from the outside and feels slightly off from the inside. You know the type. Clean lobby, working elevators, decent gym on the second floor. The kind of place that looks curated rather than lived in. The interior courtyard was the selling point. When the leasing agent showed me the apartment, she walked me to the window in the living room and gestured down at it like she was revealing something precious. It was a rectangle of space between the 4 building wings, maybe 40 feet across. A few benches. A decorative fountain that had apparently stopped working in August. A single lamp post in the center that put out a yellow, old-fashioned kind of glow. Peaceful, she said. Residents love it. I signed the lease that afternoon. Pause. The notice was already pinned to the lobby board when I moved in. I saw it on my first trip from the moving truck, arms full of boxes, and I read it while waiting for the elevator. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I assumed it was a prank. A new tenant initiation, maybe, or a joke one resident played on the others. I even took a photo of it and texted it to my friend Dana with the caption, "My new building is already unhinged." She sent back a laughing emoji. Pause. I forgot about it by dinner time. I forgot about it for 3 whole days. On my 4th night in the building, I woke up at 2:09 a.m. There was no particular reason. No sound. No nightmare. My body just decided it was done sleeping and pulled me back to the surface. I lay in bed for a few minutes looking at the ceiling. Then I got up and went to the kitchen for water. Pause. My kitchen window faces the courtyard. I filled my glass. Stood at the sink. Stared at the courtyard out of pure, thoughtless habit. The way you stare at whatever is in front of you at 2 in the morning, when your brain is still mostly offline. The lamp post was on. The fountain was still. The benches were empty. Nothing unusual. I went back to bed. Pause. I only realized the time when I checked my phone before sleeping again. 2:14. A dot M dot. I want to be clear about something. I did not see anything that night. The courtyard was empty. Completely normal dot. But when I remembered the notice the next morning, when my brain connected 2:14 a.m. with between 2:13 and 2:17 a.m., I felt something shift in my chest that I can only describe as wrong. Pause, not fear exactly. Something quieter than fear. The feeling you get when you realize, just a moment too late, that you weren't supposed to see something. I started asking around. The building had 64 units across 4 floors. Not everyone was friendly, but enough people were willing to talk in the elevator or at the mailboxes. I brought up the notice casually at first, framing it as a joke. Hey, have you seen that weird thing on the bulletin board? The responses were interesting. An older woman on the 3rd floor named Patricia said she had called the management office twice to ask about it. Both times she was told, the relevant team has been notified, and transferred to a voicemail that never called back. A guy named Theo on the 2nd floor said he had looked into the courtyard during those minutes once, about 2 weeks before I moved in. He said, very flatly, that he saw someone standing in the courtyard next to the lamppost, just standing there. Pause. What did they look like? I asked. Theo shrugged. Couldn't tell. They were just standing still, facing the building. By the time I grabbed my phone to take a photo, the time was 2:18. And they were gone? No, he said. They were still there. But I didn't feel like taking the photo anymore. Pause. I didn't know what to do with that last part. I still done single quotes T.2 days after talking to Theo. I met a woman named Selen in the elevator. She worked in IT for a healthcare company. Late 20s, efficient, not the type to be interested in building gossip. But when I mentioned the notice, she got quiet in a way that made me stop talking. The security footage, she said, after a moment. Pause. Apparently, 3 weeks before I moved in, a small group of residents had formally requested access to the courtyard security footage from those 4 minutes, citing tenant rights. The building had a security system, cameras on all courtyard-facing entry points, standard stuff. Their request was legally reasonable. Management denied it. Pause. When the residents escalated, one of them was a paralegal management. Acknowledged the camera in the courtyard entrance was under review for that specific time window, and that releasing the footage was not possible at this stage of building operations. Not possible at this stage of building operations. Asterisk that phrase. Pause. Selen had written it down because it bothered her. She showed me the email on her phone. Right there in the elevator. I read it 3 times. It did not say the footage was unavailable. It did not say the cameras malfunctioned. It said it was not possible to release, present tense, as if the footage existed, was being actively held, and the decision not to share it was ongoing and deliberate. Long pause. I pressed my floor button. The elevator doors closed. Have you looked? I asked her. At the courtyard? During those 4 minutes? She stared at the elevator doors. Once, she said. I waited. She didn't say anything else before her floor arrived. I am going to tell you what I did next, and I want you to understand I am not proud of it. But I think if you had been standing where I was standing, you would have done the same thing. On the 9th night after moving in, I set an alarm for 2:11 a.m. Pause. I sat beside my kitchen window in the dark. No lights on in my apartment. Just me and the faint yellow glow coming up from the courtyard lamppost dot at 2:12. The courtyard was empty dot at 2:13. A man walked in from the north entrance. Pause. He was wearing a dark jacket and carrying nothing. He walked to the center of the courtyard, near the broken fountain, and stopped. He stood with his back to me, facing the south wing of the building dot. He was completely still. I watched him for the entire 4 minutes. He did not move. He did not look at his phone. He did not shift his weight or adjust his clothing. He stood the way a person stands when they are waiting for something they know is going to happen dot at 2:17. He walked back out the north entrance. Long pause. I was shaking when I turned my kitchen light on, not because of what he looked like or what he did, but because of what I had noticed in the last 30 seconds of watching him dot every window facing the courtyard that I could see from my angle. 12 windows across 2 wings had a light on. Not all of them had been on at 2:13. The lights had turned on while people were watching. I did not sleep that night. By 6 in the morning, I had gone back to Sellen's email, to the management denial letter, and I had read the original lease I had signed. I want to read you one clause from that lease. Section 11, subsection D, paragraph 4. Most people skip it because it is buried in standard building compliance language. It reads, residents acknowledge that Caldwell Terrace participates in an urban habitability and behavioral research partnership in cooperation with affiliated academic and private institutions. Anonymized observational data may be collected within common area adjacent spaces for non-commercial research purposes. Long pause. Anonymized observational data. Common area adjacent spaces. Non-commercial research purposes. Pause. I called 3 other residents that morning and read them that clause. None of them remembered it. All of them had signed the same lease. Here's what I believe happened. Here's what I believe is still happening. The man in the courtyard was not a ghost. He was not a threat. He was a control variable. He was placed there every night at those exact minutes as part of an observational study. The study was measuring something specific, behavioral compliance, perhaps, or curiosity response patterns, or the neurological stress signature of being told not to look at something and choosing to do it anyway. The cameras in the courtyard were not pointed at the courtyard. They were pointed at the windows. Pause. Every person who looked, the lights that came on, the faces at the glass, they were the data. We were not watching him. He was making sure we would look, and the security footage management refused to release. It was not footage of the courtyard. It was footage of us. Long pause. I moved out of Caldwell Terrace 23 days after arriving. I have since learned that the building is owned through a property management company that lists as one of its registered partners a behavioral science consultancy headquartered in Seattle. That consultancy has published at least 4 peer-reviewed papers in the last 6 years. Two of them involve what they call compliance trigger environments. They're termed for spaces where specific instructions are issued to observe how subjects respond to unexplained. A UTHORIT. Why I'm not in any of those papers. At least not by name. But the data I provided on 9 nights of lease-approved observation is, by the language of Section 11 subsection D, paragraph 4, their legal property. Pause. The notice is still on the lobby board at Caldwell Terrace. I know because a former neighbor sent me a photo of it last month. It has been updated. Pause. The time window has changed. It now reads 3:22 a.m. to 3:26 a.m. The new residents on my old floor probably saw it there first week and thought the same thing I did. Probably laughed. Probably texted a friend. Long pause. Here is the thing I keep coming back to. We talk about privacy violations in terms of our phones, our search histories, our location data, the apps we use, and the things we buy, and the ads that follow us from website to website. We know it exists, and we accept it because it is invisible, because we never have to watch it happen. But this was different. This was a man standing in a courtyard, under a lamppost in the middle of the night, doing absolutely nothing, and a building full of people pressing their faces to cold glass at 2 a.m, because a piece of paper told them not to. And the most disturbing part, the part that I have genuinely not been able to shake, is this. They got exactly what they needed from us. Pause. Not in spite of the notice, because of it. Sleep well tonight. And if you happen to wake up at an odd hour, maybe stay away from the window. I am going to tell you what I did next. And I want you to understand, I am not proud of it. But I think if you had been standing where I was standing, you would have done the same thing. On the 9th night after moving in, I set an alarm for 2:11 a.m. Pause. I did not tell anyone. Not Dana. Not Theo. Not Selin. I just set the alarm, put my phone face down on the nightstand, and tried to sleep for a few hours beforehand. I could not. Lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and listened to the building settle around me. The distant rumble of the elevator, a door closing somewhere on the 5th floor, the low mechanical breathing of the HVAC system that never fully stopped. Caldwell Terrace at night sounded like a living thing, something large and patient and quietly aware of every person inside it. Pause. At 1:58 a.m., I gave up pretending to sleep. I went to the kitchen. I did not turn on any lights. I pulled a chair from the dining table, placed it beside the kitchen window, and sat down. Pause. The courtyard below was the same as always. Lamp post glowing. Fountain silent. Benches empty. The yellow light pooled across the stone tiles and made the shadows between the benches look heavier than they should. There was no wind. Nothing moved. I watched the clock on my microwave. 2:09, 2:10, 2:11. Pause. At 2:12. The courtyard was still empty. At 2:13. A man walked in from the north entrance. Pause. He was wearing a dark jacket and carrying nothing. He walked to the center of the courtyard, near the broken fountain, and stopped. He stood with his back to me, facing the south wing of the building. He was completely still. Pause. I watched him. My hands were flat on the windowsill. I was aware of my own breathing, too loud, too conscious. The kind of breathing you do when you are trying not to make a sound even though you are alone. He did not move. He did not look at his phone. He did not shift his weight or adjust his clothing. He stood the way a person stands when they are waiting for something they know is going to happen. Not tense. Not anxious. Just waiting with the absolute calm of someone who has done this before and knows exactly how it ends. 2:14. 2:15. Pause. I remember thinking, call someone. I remember looking at my phone on the kitchen counter and calculating whether picking it up would mean looking away, and deciding I was not willing to look away. That thought frightened me more than the man did. Pause. At 2:16, I noticed something that made my stomach drop slowly, the way it does on the first fall of a roller coaster. Every window facing the courtyard that I could see from my angle, 12 windows across 2 wings, had a light on. Not all of them had been on at 2:13. I counted back in my memory. When the man first walked in, I had registered the courtyard out of habit before focusing on him. 3 windows lit, maybe 4 now at 12. Pause. The lights had turned on while people were watching Dot at 2:17. The man walked back out the north entrance. Steady pace. No pause at the exit. Gone. The courtyard was empty again in under 8 seconds. Within 2 minutes, the lights in the surrounding windows went off, one by one, like a building exhaling. Long pause. I sat in my kitchen chair until 3 a.m. and did not move. Did not sleep that night. By 4 in the morning, I was at my laptop. I pulled up the building's management company website first. A clean, minimal site with a contact form and a list of properties in 4 states. I searched the company name alongside words like research, study, academic partnership. Nothing useful came back. Pause. By 5, I had gone back to Sullen's forwarded email, to the management denial letter she had showed me. I read it 4 times. I wrote down the specific phrasing on a notepad like I was studying for something. Not possible at this stage of building operations. Not unavailable. Not malfunctioning. Not possible to release. Present tense. Active choice. Pause. At 6 in the morning, I opened my lease. I want to be honest with you. I had not read my lease carefully when I signed it. I skimmed it the way most people skim a lease, looking for the rent amount, the move-out terms, the pet policy. I initialed where the leasing agent pointed and told myself I would read the full thing later. I never did until that morning. Pause. Section 11 is titled Building Operations and Compliance. It is 4 pages long. It covers noise ordinances, maintenance access windows, utility responsibility, guest parking. Standard language. The kind of text that is designed to be unread. Subsection D. Paragraph 4 is on the 3rd page of that section. I want to read it to you exactly as it appears. Pause. Residents acknowledge that Caldwell Terrace participates in an urban habitability and behavioral research partnership in cooperation with affiliated academic and private institutions. Anonymized observational data may be collected within common area adjacent spaces for non-commercial research purposes. By occupying a designated unit, residents provide passive consent to observational protocols conducted during standard building operating hours, including overnight periods. Long pause. Anonymized observational data. Common area adjacent spaces. Passive consent. Pause. I read that paragraph 6 times. Then I sat back and thought about every moment since I moved in. The notice. Theo in the elevator saying he did not feel like taking the photo anymore. Selen's silence before her floor arrived. Patricia calling management twice and reaching no one. 12 windows turning on in the dark while a man stood motionless below. Pause. I called 3 other residents that morning and read them that clause. None of them remembered it. One of them, a retired teacher named Glenn in Unit 2A, went quiet for a long time and then said, very carefully, I've been here 4 years and I've never read that before. Asterisk, asterisk. All of them had signed the same lease. Here is what I believe happened. Here is what I believe is still happening. Pause. The man in the courtyard was not a threat. He was not a ghost, not a trespasser, not a confused stranger. He was a control variable, placed there every night, at those exact 4 minutes, as part of a structured behavioral study. The notice was not a warning. It was a stimulus. Pause. The study was measuring something specific, behavioral compliance perhaps, or curiosity response patterns under low authority instruction, or the neurological stress profile of being told not to do something ordinary and choosing to do it anyway in the dark alone when no one is watching, except someone was watching. The cameras in the courtyard were not pointed at the courtyard. Pause. They were pointed at the windows, every person who turned there. Light on every face that appeared at the glass, every phone camera raised. Toward the courtyard and then lowered again. That was the data. We were not watching him. He was ensuring we would look. Pause. And the security footage management refused to release. It was not footage of the courtyard. It was footage of us.